Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Dominion figure to take a look at. You can see we have another of the Roar Strikers figures here with us, and this is the Ichthyovenator, and it is actually kind of, an interesting looking figure. Now, originally I wasn't a huge fan of this one just because I felt like the coloration looked pretty bad on it. Like, the fact that we have this beautiful kind of like really bright green up there on the sail-like areas of our Ichthyovenator looks awesome. But then when you come down to the body, you don't have any coloration at all. However, the good thing about this is the tail actually continues on with that green, so I'm very intrigued to see how it looks when I actually pull it out of the box and apply the tail and get a look at the figure entirely out of the packaging, because I feel like currently it doesn't really look that great, but once it's out of the packaging, it's probably going to look a lot better. Definitely a pretty cool looking sculpt on this one as well, which I am a fan of. As far as the box art and everything goes, you again have your standard Dominion packaging, something we've seen the entire way through here. And then on the back, you can see kind of a sneak peek of the figure, its action features, and also kind of a sneak peek of how it looks with the tail on it. And then down here, we have the other figures that are in this wave, which the Rajasaurus we have already reviewed, and there's also a Pteranodon and a Triceratops, which I will be reviewing at some point very soon. So let's go ahead and pop this out of the box and check it out. And here is our Ichthyovenator. And it actually does look really nice, like definitely way better than I was expecting it to, and probably one of the more appealing looking figures as far as Mattel paint jobs go lately, just because it does kind of have the appearance of coloration from head to tail. It definitely would have been cooler to have a little more, like maybe even some of this kind of lighter green kind of striped down or something throughout, just to give it a little extra paint application on the body itself. I also would have liked to have seen this lighter tone of color here run along the underside a little bit, and of course painted nails, but those are just minor gripes that we've been having for very, very long periods of time that just don't ever seem to get resolved. But as far as the figure as a whole goes, it definitely looks really neat. So let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Ichthyovenator, one thing you could probably take note of straight away is the fact that it definitely has a very crocodilian type of a look to it. It greatly reminds me of the Irritator figure that was released by Mattel quite a ways back, as far as the way the head in general is sculpted out, but mostly like the scaling and everything, and the fact that we also kind of have like that crocodilian type look for the teeth. So that's definitely something that may be a plus, may not be a plus. It really depends on your views, but I really do actually quite like that type of a look. And again, the scale detail and everything here has that kind of very big rough and rugged look to it. Same type of scale detail, a little bit starting here on the lower jaw, but kind of tapers off as you lead out toward the tip of the jaw to kind of like a finer scaling a little bit, definitely a little bit smaller. You primarily have this kind of like greenish tone of color for the body, and then this kind of like a light brown for the lower jaw. The light brown, unfortunately, is only on the lower jaw. You can see it doesn't run into the throat at all. You can definitely take note to the nostrils right there. You've got the eyes painted pretty nicely, as we have a nice yellowish tone, like a dark yellow. But one thing that is almost trademark Mattel at this point that I actually thought they were going to give up on, they've given the pupils there the same kind of like greenish tone of color that we have for the primary body color, and that doesn't look very good at all. It doesn't look as bad as it does on some others, like the Sinoceratops they had released a ways back, but it really would have looked better had they just given it a black pupil, because that's just such a minor little area of paintwork that I feel like it really wouldn't have been a big deal to apply, and it would have made a pretty good difference in the face and the appeal factor of the face. But you can see that it does still have a pretty nice looking gloss coat and everything to it. There's also some kind of green, splotchy green here that runs there around the eye socket. The mouth does open, of course. You can see it opens and closes, so we've got an articulated jaw, but that's part of the action feature. The teeth themselves are sculpted pretty nicely. Every tooth is sculpted individually. You can see they're kind of spaced out throughout the mouth, and they're also painted with a nice off-white, kind of bordering on a yellow. The mouth doesn't open all that wide. That's really about as wide as it goes, so I'm trying to get in there to see the inside of the mouth detail. There you can see the tongue and everything on the inside of the mouth. Has some nice texturing to it, and there's also a beautiful gloss coat included on the inside of the mouth as per usual to give it some nice realism. Same deal as far as the coloration sculpt, everything here on this side. You can see that the teeth, sit nicely within the jaw there once you actually push the mouth closed, but the eye is actually really nicely placed over here, so that's a plus to see less sloppiness in the eyes. Pretty nice looking scale detail here on the top of the head. As you lead back into the neck, you start to pick up some rows of osteoderms or scutes running down along the side of the neck. You've got some nice skin wrinkles and some hanging skin here on the underside of the throat. And you also see the top of the sail there picking up. You start to see the beginning of it as we have a little area of the sail before it kind of cuts off and then picks back up right there. You can see that looks pretty nice and has a really bright green, very flashy looking green. And as we continue to move back here a little further into the body, you can again see more clusters of those kind of like scutes and stuff, those osteoderms moving along the upper part of the dinosaur, leading from the shoulder toward the hip region. And they're very big. You can see they start out kind of small, but definitely increase in size. You can see again the sail area also looks pretty good. It has some nice like cracks and crevices for the skin texture as well. And you also have some of the darker body color that kind of runs up and sort of splotches and designs through the sail area of our Ichthyovenator. And again, that really bright green, and that continues to run the course of the upper side of that sail-like area of our dinosaur. Gorgeous looking skin texture here in the stomach region. I can definitely say that. That looks beautiful, and you can pick up on the rib cage a little bit right there. You've also got some nice muscle definition moving down the course of the arm here of our dinosaur as you lead out into the hand. And I like that the fingers are kind of webbed. Definitely looks really neat. Something I don't really recall seeing on Mattel before. It's possible that it's happened and I've forgotten about it, but I don't really remember it. You also have scutes running down the fingers. Again, no nail paint, but the nails themselves look pretty good. Would have been nice to see a little bit of a gloss coat or something on them at the very least, but we don't really have that. The hands look oddly big to me, like the arm looks small compared to the size of the hands, but outside of that it looks pretty good. And then as you move back here, again, you've got some muscle definition here, nicely displayed in the thighs, something you always see, but also beautiful looking skin texture, really nice vibrant detail as per usual on this figure. You can see the kneecap right there as well as the calf muscle, and then moving down into the foot, pretty nice looking foot sculpt, but it's kind of your standard Mattel foot sculpt. It would have been actually pretty cool to see maybe like webbed toes down here, kind of like we have webbed fingers, but they did not really do that. We just have kind of like that standard theropod foot sculpt. You can see we do have dew claws though. Unfortunately, they are unpainted just like the rest of the claws there. And then as you lead up, one thing I do like is again the fact that this green runs out here and overtakes the entire tail. I really think that the fact that this whole tail is green saves the paint job of the figure, and I also like the fact that they started the green before we reach the area where you connect the tail. So rather than having that super abrupt transition to that green, we have a little bit of a smoother transition. It's not perfect, but it definitely looks better than just having this part green and this running this same body, that darker body color all the way out to here, and then just kind of having a super abrupt transition. They did try to make it a little bit smoother and more natural. And then as you lead out here into the tail, again, you have a really cool looking tail with the nice kind of sail-like area on both the upper side and underside of the sail, and you continue to see those osteoderms running out the length of the tail as well. The tail leads out pretty straight, but then also kind of points down, and also has a slight turn there at the, you can actually see a very slight turn through the entire thing, a very, very slight, almost like S-like curve. And then if you take a look at the other side, of course, it's all going to pretty much look the same. You're not really going to see any huge differences outside of the fact that the legs are positioned differently, as the right leg is leading, whereas the left leg is trailing. The hands are pretty much in a neutral position, and you would display them how you would like. And all of the paintwork here up into the sail looks a little different compared to what we see over there, but not too much. Almost the same design, but just slightly different. And I don't really see any speckling or anything that I'm picking up on this figure. Maybe it's a little hard to tell. I don't really pick up on it. I'm not noticing it at all as far as the speckling goes. You can see what the detailing and everything here looks like on the underside of the figure, though. Nice looking sculpt pretty much all around as far as this figure goes. So definitely much nicer than I was expecting it to be. I'm actually a way bigger fan of this than I thought I was going to be, especially again thanks to the greenish tail here on the Ichthyovenator. Another really cool Mattel figure. As far as articulation goes, you have the articulation in the jaw as well as the articulation in the neck, but that's all part of the action feature. You also have the arm articulation forward and back quite nicely, and also out away from the body. The arms actually move really smoothly, but at the same time a little jerky. Like, it's not hard to move them. Sometimes they're a little stiff. This is not at all, and in fact it actually moves really smoothly out away from the body, but you can see a little bit of a jerky motion as we go. And then we also have the same type of articulation for the legs, a little jerky, but at the same time they're not overly stiff. They're pretty smooth, and they don't really move out away from the body, maybe slightly, but not too much. And then, of course, a swivel tail on top of everything. And you do have the Jurassic Facts app code, which is actually hidden within the sail area, which is definitely a plus because it doesn't look so obnoxious and ugly on this compared to others. And there is the code if you would like to add this to your collection. Hopefully it scans okay since we don't have the greatest light up close here in this position as the light's kind of focused out there. But as far as the action feature goes, again with the Roar Strikers, you basically just push the figure down and we're going to see the action feature as well as hear the noises. About to say we didn't get anything that time, but we did on the way back up. So we've got a few noises, some pretty nice articulation, and a pretty cool action feature for everything. As far as the size goes, definitely right in the standard Roar Strikers size range. You're looking at about 13.5 inches or around 34 centimeters, approaching 34.5. And for a height, the highest point would probably be the sail. I'd say about 5 inches or 13 centimeters, closing in on that area. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our brand new Mattel Ichthyovenator. And you can definitely see again, just judging by this figure next to these ones, it falls right in the same size range as pretty much all of the previous figures of this style, which would be like the Roar Attacks, of course, Roar Strikers, Roarivores, those type of figures. So if you have any of the theropod, Roarivores, Roar Strikers type figures, you're definitely going to know again roughly what the size is of this one. And then for just a little further evidence of that, here you have the massive action Ichthyovenator, which you can see is quite a bit larger than our Ichthyovenator. So you can again see, I think, that this falls right there in that same Roar Striker size range as most of the other figures have always been. But for another comparison, there is the new Rajasaurus, which is also part of this wave of Roar Strikers, again, next to our Ichthyovenator, helping again to give you an idea of the fact that it pretty much is right there in the same size range, maybe a little lower to the ground. The Rajasaurus looks slightly taller, but again, as far as the overall length, body mass, all of that stuff, it's pretty much the same as our Rajasaurus. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Dominion Roar Strikers Ichthyovenator is another really cool figure and surprisingly a lot nicer than I was expecting it to be. I had seen a few images of this leading up until this point, and I don't think I had seen very many images of it with the tail attached. 90% of the images, it seems like, that I had seen of it were all just like the in-box image where you could see the figure but you couldn't see it fully. And if you look at the first, like, 3/4 of the figure without the addition of the tail, it kind of looks a little boring because you don't really have much color on the body at all. It's all based up in the sail area and a little bit in the face. So I felt like it wasn't really going to look that great when it had arrived. But luckily for me, the coloration does kind of take over the tail. And I feel like just that one little area of adding in some coloration honestly makes a huge difference for the appeal factor of this figure. The paint job definitely could be better. I'm not going to say this is an excellent paint job, but it's good enough that the figure as a whole looks kind of fully painted outside of the nails. And again, it looks striking enough that it's pretty appealing to the eye. And I think a lot of that also has to do with the really nice tones of green that they've used on this. Striking for sure would be those tones of green. They really stand out. But as a whole, the entire figure has a very cool look to it, very unique look to it, and definitely a species that I wasn't thinking Mattel would ever make, and that's something that they've been doing a lot lately, is surprising me with really cool species choices. But I feel like they did a fantastic job, again, as far as the overall detailing and appearance to this Ichthyovenator goes. When it comes to creating one that kind of has a Jurassic Park-ish type of a look, this is pretty much exactly what I would expect it to look like, and all of the detail on the figure, honestly, is really, really crisp. It looks great overall. Definitely a strong candidate for a repaint would be this figure. I feel like a dark wash would just really highlight the detail on this one, especially in the thigh area and the stomach region with all the cracks and crevices in the skin texture. You also have a pretty cool action feature, but it's your standard when it comes to these type of figures. A pretty nice amount of articulation, but that's also the standard as far as these type of figures, and some pretty fun noises that are just basically like kind of generic theropod noises, but they also are pretty decent, I guess. So as a whole, this is actually a really nice figure, and again, one that I like a lot more than I was expecting to. So if you would like to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that. So make sure you check the link in the description, grab yourself this really cool Ichthyovenator, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.